Right, welcome everyone along to our meeting today. Call for apologies. Stu Duncan.
Is he not coming?
No.
Got to him this morning, he's going to be here.
They must have something. Move from Harry.
No.
Can I have someone move the apology, please? Second it. We can put all those in favour. Aye. Against. Very thank you. Can I have someone confirm the minutes of the previous meeting with a true and correct record, please? Which ones are we doing?
9th of May and 20th.
The 9th of May ones and the extra meeting on the 27th of May at night, please.
Yeah.
Becky McCauley, move it. Duncan Helm, second it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Very thank you. Mind members, the declaration of interest, if they find they have a conflict of interest in anything being talked about, please speak up. Right, Tanya, come and take a seat up here. Show everyone at the table.
No.
Becky
Yeah.
McCauley, Duncan Helm,
Hi, Duncan.
Mayor Tim
Hey, Tanya.
Logan, Peter Kelly, the CEO. Wayne is our for you today.
Right, a minute.
Minutes secretary, got Louise Van to walk behind you. She's GIC and Dylan Rush.
Yeah.
You know, Janice,
Yes.
and we've got Susan Finley, she's our finance officer. Right,
So, as a part of the Maniototo business group, we were discussing options of a vision group for Ranfurly alone, because we feel like there was sort of an area that Ranfurly's main street could uplift itself. And a part of our discussions was to put lighting in the most beautiful building that we could see, which is our railway station, which has a lot of mana in Ranfurly anyway. So my vision with talking to the group was to really add substantial lighting to it. I've got some photos for inspiration, and also lighting to the beautiful oak trees, and also the little small trees to be wrapped in some fairy lights. So this is just the inspirational photos of how the railway station possibly could look. So yeah, I've talked to Ewan Mason, and he agrees that the station should have significant lighting so we can see it at all times for the whole community, and so everyone can embrace the sort of lighting up of Ranfurly, really. So, and we hope that this could get passed through. It would be amazing. Any questions?
the price, the cost of all this. And so it'll go, if I'm correct, into the budget for 25, 26 with it.
Well,
Peter?
he's coming up like,
Yes, because all the budgets are done for 24, 25.
Yeah, I mean, all the budgets are done for 24, 25. Submissions are on that.
Yeah.
Of the annual plan. It could be recast into the 25, 34 long-term plan.
Yep.
As it'd be in the tens of thousands, I would have thought, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands. So I mean, that's something that the board could carry forward over in their deliberation next year when it comes to the LTP. Which I don't think you've got any funding set aside in the next financial year for this sector.
No. Yeah, so with rates rises and everything else going on, everything's, as Susan will attest to, is very tight. Money.
Yeah, so there's no money put aside for Ranfurly to access through dragging people in here, through tourism, through, you know, energising Ranfurly. There's no
Maybe the
specific
tourism
money.
Maybe the tourism grant, and that wouldn't, this wouldn't fill it.
So no, it's not
No.
officially too broad, as it is in, but you do have the promotions grant, and also the community grant, which is what we're speaking at the business secret the other evening. So, whilst it's not in this current annual plan, there is the opportunity in the future to have that grant increase, which would be able to help fund for things such as this.
Right.
And that is primarily focused about bringing business into the Maniototo.
How much is the net promotion grant for each year? I can't remember.
I think it's, I want to say 10,000.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I might be overshooting that. And that is, obviously, we have had the conversation before with the board that we haven't had evidence of a need to increase the pot, so we haven't increased the pot. But you are seeing evidence here today that there isn't a consider an increase.
But if we increase the pot, that comes out of rates,
Yes.
it'll be added to the rate.
Yeah.
Rateable.
For Maniototo.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you.
Everyone here, thank you very much, Danny. All right. Submissions. Susan.
And it's hard to get apologies. The right reports. Tomorrow, next.
So basically, we've got the recommendation here. Obviously, we need to receive the report, consider the submissions, and decide on the action that should be taken, and recommend to council the action that the board would like to be taken. So you could suggest as part of the recommendations that you could include the consideration by staff to look at something like this for the LTP.
Yep.
And come back to you. The building is actually a district building. So we'll just have to work out whether it's a building or it's a promotion.
Oh, so it's districtised as a building.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I suggest that you perhaps, if you want to, note that submission and request staff go away and consider it for the LTP process and come back to the board.
So if it's districtised as a building, does it go to council?
Yes, but you could actually fund the lights.
Yep.
Out of promotions grants.
That's Ellie. Is she after that? Ellie Mason?
Correct.
So we would, if we were to do that, we would require to consider an increase in the grants and promotions budgets to cater for it, because it would be expensive. So we would do that through the LTP process.
Yep. Becky? Any thoughts?
So because it's a rainfully building, is it just coming from our pot? Like we can't get any help from CODC? Or is that what you're saying? Like we fund it outright with nothing up central that we can.
I don't know.
So when the work gets done, like who does the work? Can we get different quotes from different, like can we go locally to see what they can do? Put the lights in, or does it have to be done through? Because they might donate their time, or
The building is managed up here, but it sits under a district pot as opposed to the Maniototo funding pot for buildings, and definitely would work with the local electricians. I've been working with Tanya to understand what they're thinking about, and I've had discussions with the local electricians, and sending the scheme away to get a pricing. To see what it's going to cost.
With it being business in Maniototo or Renfrew, I think would be good to, obviously, if they could get costings at cost price and that kind of thing for us.
They're a business whether they would do
That is the opportunity for the community to come. Is there any funds that you can apply to?
No, yeah, there will be. Yeah. We can have a look into what other funding pots are available. Rebecca's the one, all of that type of thing. But
Told you didn't want him.
if it's a grant fund, then it's slightly different to the typical council process for running a building project. So you could, if you're doing it through a grant fund,
Yeah.
seek essentially a group to coordinate and organise that for you, and whatever the billing sits at would be between the group and the supplier. And you seek the board, you seek the board, to supply the funding grant.
Right.
So
I think it's a great idea.
there's two different ways to run a process.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think every Christmas when the lights go up, everyone comments on the building and it's at 10 o'clock at night. So I think all year round would be amazing. So I'm all for it. Right, so that's my advice is to put something in, as a noting, the staff will go away and look at it. Yeah. The else is different.
This will be added to that.
Given the nature of the works, just reading you, would it be classified as capital works or would it just be operational in terms of operate because of the cost involved? You know,
I think it would be capital, because of the cost involved, I think it's going to be capital. Then obviously, operational costs.
But I guess the question is that if the board thought it was such a good idea, but if they didn't want to use grant funding, they could put it into the mix of CapEx projects. And then council would consider it in the whole round of everything else. So there is another avenue.
Through, and I think through the LTP is the big.
That's right, to explore the funding options for us.
I wonder if there's a big solar farm out there that might want to do
Very shortly.
Go away.
just put it up there.
Why not?
Why not? Put a solar panels and a battery in and pay for the lights and be chicken thing.
We can explore that.
I'm not suggesting that, I think we alongside this.
Yep.
Someone might want to talk.
I'll shut up. Right, so what do you think, Duncan?
I think it's a good idea.
Pardon?
I think it's a good idea. For the Peter said about the CapEx thing, if it's permanent, it probably would be, wouldn't it?
Possibly. So that will be added, put in under option one. Is that correct?
So I've got, the A, receiving reports to levels working. B, considers the submissions of the budget on actions should be taken. And I've got a new C, being recommends to council to investigate installing lights at the Redfern railway station as part of the 2025-34 long-term plan.
Okay, does everyone understand that one? So a mover for option one. Seconded, thank you, Neil. All those in favour? Aye, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Right, so the date of the next meeting is Thursday, the 20th of June. So, shut the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we're going to have a digitalisation work. You'll enjoy it.
Be quick. Online.
No, you're not.
Thanks,
Go.
Thank you. See you.
Now, between Susan and I, we'll run this next bit.
Now, Wayne, are we still live on air?
Yes, we are.
Right, just remember we're live on air.
Dylan and Saskia, you might want to come up to the table. Sorry, Dylan and Luke.
Sure.
I can't see behind Susan and Duncan. Hiding in the back there.
Getting free that Monday.
Shit, busy. Oh, yeah, sorry. You're right.
And the meeting person will come. This is the fourth one.
Yeah, I'm getting it down, getting it headed down, good.
That's the point where I actually clean up.
Well, no. I'm just the other chair at the start. You're the main event. Right, you want to fire off?
Would you like, Ross?
Right. So up there, we say continuing distritisation, and I think the most important word is continuing, because as you'll see when Susan shows the slides, we've been on this journey for quite some time and are most of the way through it. So when people think about distritisation, they think, oh, this has changed, but it's not actually. We've been doing it. Roding was distritised in the 90s and Three Waters were distritised in 2015. And actually, when you get to see the figures that Susan will put up, in both those instances, the Maniototo has been a massive beneficiary. So it's worthy of consideration, given your patch and who you have to be thinking about that moving forward. Maybe that would be the case again. There's three things that have fired up this discussion. One is the financial situation that us and all councils in New Zealand are in. We have legislatively dictated to us two debt ceilings. One is what we have at the moment, and another is if we apply for a credit rating, we can extend that out a bit. But the capital works projects that we have in front of us that we know we're going to have to do under the current laws, primarily in the Three Waters space, is going to chew up that debt in a short number of years. And when our debt gets chewed up, the work that we have to do doesn't stop, but our ability to pay for it through debt does, which means you're paying for it now. So the ratepayers of today will be paying for tomorrow because there's no debt for them to be able to pay forward. So council, there's two parts to that. Council firstly needs to have a really strong overview of everything underneath it in terms of, we know what the debt ceiling is, so we could have, and you'll see the situation you guys are facing with your, with all your community halls. You could make a motion saying, we want all these halls upgraded to earthquake standard, and the council could go, well, we just don't have the money. That's the kind of situation that we're going to be in within the next 3, 4, 5 years, just depending on how things go. And secondly, in amongst that is we do own land assets at council. There's a couple of types to keep it really simple. Reserve lands, forget about them. Freehold land, which we have some of, it can be sold and utilised whatever we want. Endowment land can only be used in the area that the endowment's for. So Cromwell, we'll talk about somebody else. Cromwell has quite a bit of endowment land that can only be used for the borough of Cromwell. But at the moment, under the way we do things, we can't even talk about using some of that Cromwell endowment land for Cromwell Three Waters projects, because that's the way we do it at the moment is the boards decide what happens with their land that gets sold within the ward. And of course, with distritisation, Three Waters from 2015, that doesn't come within that purview. So we want to be able to open the door to a conversation further down the track as to whether or not that's something that the council wants to do and the community wants us to do. At the moment, we can't even have that conversation. So that's the first thing, is the financial situation. The second thing is the Cromwell Town Hall, Cromwell Memorial Hall. And you'll be thinking, why the hell are you talking about the Cromwell Memorial Hall in Ranfurly? And I get that. But here's the thing. We're not going to get another one of those. There's no way we're going to build another thing like that in Central Otago, I wouldn't think. So in essence, it's going to be the Central Otago Event Centre. It's if there are big concerts or shows there, people from here will probably go, although I appreciate more people from Cromwell will use it than people from the Maniototo. It's going to cost approximately $280 a rating unit in Cromwell just to insure it, depreciate it, run it, heat it, and all of those things. And the question needs to be asked is whether that's fair if it's the Central Otago Event Centre, or if that's only, that's not what its name will be. Now, I can totally get why people in Ranfurly will be going, I don't really care, it's way the hell up there in Cromwell. Hold on to that thought until you see how much Cromwell subsidises the roads in the Maniototo and how much Cromwell and the bigger towns subsidise the Three Waters. Because that's what I'm saying, it's continuing distritisation. We've already done a whole lot that has been to a massive advantage for here. Maybe it's time to push some levelling out, which would be nothing compared to the levelling out that's already happened. And the third thing is simply, council's a business. That's how I've always seen it. It's a special business, but it's still a business. And we're a business at the moment is running in the finance department 5 sets of books instead of 1. And that's just grossly inefficient. And it's also really difficult in terms of looking at your rates bill and going, I don't understand this. I still struggle after 7.5 years as mayor when somebody comes to me and goes, explain my rates bill to me, because some of it's ward-based, some of it's land-based, some of it's capital. And it really is just so complicated and needlessly complicated, needlessly time consuming for staff as well. So there'd be great efficiency gained from doing it. So there's that side of it. The other side of it is consequential. If we do go ahead with this, what is going to be the place of boards after that? And that's really the conversation that is most important, because I am a massive, massive believer in community boards, to the extent that LGNZ chose me as one of 2 people to go and talk to the National Party backbenchers at the start of this year about the importance of localism and effectively community boards. I've been there for 7.5 years. I've tried my hardest to get involved in the Maniototo as much as I can. Probably took a few steps back on that on Wednesday, but that's all right. I still don't know the people you guys know. I don't have the conversations you guys have. Far less the councillors and Alex or Cromwell or Tim that aren't from here. There's no way that we can have the communication that came through about the naming of the community board last week. I thought that was a really good dialogue, that the board was able to tell us what the community was thinking. So how do we not just maintain the boards, because we must maintain the boards, but how we enhance what the boards are doing through this process as well? Because to me, if we don't make the community boards as vital, if not more vital than they are now, and we're not going to get the people to run for them, they may fall over, that would be a disaster, because we would still have people coming forward saying, I speak for the Maniototo. But they're going to be unelected, and they're going to be, we could probably name them. And that's not what we want, because they won't be represented, they'll be represented in a small part of the community. So that is why we're having this conversation. There's no predetermination in this, but it is a conversation that for a long time has needed to be held, I believe. For context, our boards are the most delegated and most powerful in the country. We are an outlier by a long, long way. And maybe now is the time that we need to look at what it's costing us, not just what it's gaining us by being that outlier. I'll pass over to Peter now, because that was probably the shortest I've done, and I appreciate we've got time for questions.
Yeah, and look, I certainly concur with the Mayor's comments on that and agree with all of that. You'll recall, obviously, at the beginning of the year, we had the delegation discussion, and last year, beginning of this year, this board was fairly relaxed with that sort of discussion around delegation. But obviously, you would have gathered that that wasn't true across all the community boards, and there were some strong opinions from the community boards and from members of the community. And the general prevailing view that came out of that was, actually, let's have this district discussion first, before we have a look at delegation. And so this is what we're here to do. So this is taking that advice which came from council. Let's have a districtisation discussion. So that's where we're at. It is on a bit of a timeline, because the outcome of this discussion does need to feed into the long-term plan. So we have to have a decision point probably around the end of September, and you'll see that in the timeline, because that'll be this, depending on what decisions are reached, that'll form the starting point for some of the financial policies and bits and pieces that we have to do as part of that LGP. This is not about changing levels of service distribution at this point in time. This is all this is about, is the pot of fund to fund these activities, which currently are ward-based, should they be districtised and paid for out of the entire district? That's what the discussion is, not changing the amount of money that's going into these activities. It's just changing the source of funding from a ward-based rate to districtised rate. And the net result of this is that we will feed this back into the delegation discussion, because the council was quite clear in its guidance to bring that back this side of Christmas. So we will. And the outcome of what you council chooses to do, districtisation, will then inform what we do around the delegations. So there is a flow to it all. Susan.
Okay, we'll skip through to get this one. So just this timeline is just reiterating, this is the reason why we are going through this process now is because it needs to feed in, as Peter said, to the long-term plan and the other items within that long-term plan, the delegations paper, and then we look at certain levels of service reviews and we would as part of the LTP process. So what I'm going to do in the first part is the big, I'm just going to talk about the why, and then we'll come to more of a discussion on how, and that's, I mean, this is just the start of that discussion today. So the why, back in 2014, when the legislation changed, council was required to do a 30-year infrastructure strategy and a 10-year financial strategy. Now, the 30-year infrastructure strategy comes from the fact that we've got a lot of infrastructure and it's got long lives on it. And we need to be thinking not just about the here and now, we need to be thinking about the future. And what's actually happened is that previous generations have consumed our infrastructure assets and haven't necessarily paid the true cost of those. So we are now in a position where we're kind of in catch-up mode. So the only area that isn't in that infrastructure strategy is the ward-based infrastructure. So, and you can see from like community facilities, like for instance, the Maniototo pulp, we want to do the replacement for that. There's not necessarily a big bucket of funded depreciation sitting there to actually fund that capital expenditure. So we have to work out how we can do that as a whole. That leads us to debt levels, and both Peter and Tim have mentioned that we will meet our debt levels as a council. So it's council that holds the assets. Council is the entity that has to borrow externally. We're now in external debt by 25 million at this stage. And if you, the program of the Three Waters infrastructure upgrades at the moment sits at 400 million over the next 10 years. That we will do our best to refine that, but we have to meet the national standards, and those are the standards that stand today. We will meet our debt level very early on in the next 10 years if we don't address some of the issues and look at that financial strategy from an overall perspective. So when you've got decisions being made at ward level around rates and reserve, using your reserve money and actually putting that towards infrastructure, and we haven't got a build up of funds, that will affect our whole council entire financial strategy. So we're going to have to go into a prioritisation process so that we can actually manage our finances as a whole over the long term to meet national standards and actually the community needs. Question.
What is that deal? 25 million at the moment. Is that what we owe at the moment? That's right.
Yeah.
Or is that what we can borrow?
I know we can
No.
borrow up to 175% of our revenue. So that's about 108 million-ish.
Yeah.
We could at the moment under the requirement.
Okay. 108 million at the moment, what we're looking at just for Alexandra Wastewater Land is 100% in one project. That's an interesting.
With a credit rating, we can go up to 285%, which is I don't know, 160 million.
Yeah.
But if you've got 400 million on water looming over the next 10 years, even that's not going to really help too much.
And we have to also question the affordability of people. We can borrow X amount, but what percentage of our people can't afford to pay the rates or the rent increase that will come? Somebody saying we've always got to remember residents. Say to me today, my rent just went up $16 a week directly because that's how much the rates are going up. So, it's not just for us.
Digitising will also allow us to look at the strategic level of service across the community and particularly put a district-wide lens on facilities. As Tim said, is that we're not going to be doing another fall to the magnitude of Cromwell, because that will become, that'll be utilised by others in the district. So we've got to think about that. We've only got 26,000 across the board for the district. So we need to be thinking of trying to spread the load a lot wider for that 18% of rates. And as we've said, it will bring some efficiency, reduce administration, and definitely the improvement in the transparency so that people can actually understand where their rates are going. So just land sales was something that came up in the delegations, and obviously land sales, proceeds from any land sales is quite critical to a financial strategy. Endowment versus freehold land, excluding anything to do with reserves. Endowment land sales would have to be used for the purpose of the endowment. So we know we've got endowment land in Cromwell that is for the purpose of the borough. So we have had legal opinion. We could use that for wastewater or water upgrade for the borough of Cromwell, and that would give a district-wide impact. So it would mean that we weren't, going into debt for that particular project, which would minimise, the interest cost and the servicing of that loan and any repayments that might need to happen.
So if you sold 10 acres in Cromwell for 11 million, and that money went into doing a water scheme for it.
Yeah.
So therefore the cost wouldn't be distributed over the whole community.
Yeah.
Correct.
And they would, so
what that would mean is that we could use some of that land sales to fund that particular build for the borough, but the rest of the district would actually benefit because, Yeah.
So if everyone's rates are going to go up $50 a year to pay for Cromwell blah blah plant, but we're able to sell enough land to pay for the plant instead, then everybody in the district gets the benefit of that $50. But importantly, the people of Cromwell, they do too. So it's kind of like, well, I'm still $50 better off. I don't care if you're $50 better off in Ranfurly. That's fine. People are probably going to look at themselves and go, I'm $50 better off in the discussion. Don't know, but we'll see.
So freehold land can be sold, and that can actually go to the district. So technically that is owned by council, but it's not necessarily the way that we've managed their conversations previously. In the case of the Maniototo, you've got your two freehold farms, and you've got the debt for the hospital. So if this process happened, we'd be distributing both. So the loan for the hospital has another 20 years to run. So that funding stream of that is already allocated.
So if you ended up selling, those two freehold farms, is that endowment land or is that council land?
So that's freehold land.
So it's council land.
So if the council decided to sell it, the debt would still be council. Wouldn't be moved to the community, but debt wouldn't go away unless it was decided to sell the land and cancel the debt up, but I don't see anything to do with it, given how well the setups work.
Yeah.
But the debt would transfer to the rest of the district as well.
Your endowment land needs be.
Couple of blocks up. And
Yeah.
Which would be for the benefit of Naseby Borough, wouldn't it?
We'd have to.
We'd have to look at it.
Yeah, we'd have to, because it was some endowment has.
Depends on what they do.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the Naseby Bar.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it, because
Yep.
of the way the money.
Yeah.
Janice uses it, but now Naseby comes. Which, fair enough.
So once again, it's all about that long-term financial strategy. It's making sure that we've got the right funding streams for upgrades, etc. The right funding streams for making sure that we keep our level of service strategic across the district, and make sure that we're managing it for the current generation, but also future generations. So it's trying to line up those financial levers with what they have. 95% of what we do is around infrastructure, and if you look at what's water-based at the moment, and that 18%, the majority of it is still infrastructure. So we need to be treating it in the same way. We need to be thinking about the funding of depreciation. We need to be thinking about replacements. And the Maniototo pool is a perfect example. So the maps of what's it got? It should have the Maniototo land holdings.
Yeah,
Um,
and those maps are on the share foot, so, and
Yeah.
actually I've just opened it up. So I'm looking at Naseby endowment, the mayor, councillors and burgesses of the borough of Naseby. Currently worth $1.5 million, 779 hectares. So that's the sort of level of information that's in that booklet there. You have access to it because Wayne sent out the link a couple of weeks ago. So you can follow it to them. And there's other bits of land and pieces that you own as well. It's not endowment land.
Okay. So if you go straight to the graph, so around the reserve, your reserve accounts. So we're going into reserve accounts here. This is where you build up pots of money where you're funding depreciation and you're not using it all for renewals, and it'll fall down into a specific reserve account as opposed to reserve land. We've had a legal opinion on that, and how we account for it is unique to us, so we can actually consolidate some of these reserve accounts through the distributisation. This graph here shows you, so the Maniototo is the orange. The dark blue, which has got the highest bars in the first few years, is the Cromwell ward reserves. And you can see that they deplete in year 4 of that graph, and that's because they'll be used for the Cromwell Memorial Hall build. So quite often what's happened whilst we've had these ward-based assets / funding streams, and is that wards have borrowed from other wards. Now, we're not going to be in a position to do that after Cromwell's built the Memorial Hall, because that's using up their reserve pot first. So when you see the orange bars in the outer years for the Maniototo, that's because of your earthquake strengthening for all your community facilities. Now, obviously, you don't have enough reserves in the overall pot to cope with that. So we would have to look at that as another external borrowing, as a tool to actually fund it. And that's the reason why we need to think about this distributisation, because we would have to look at that and look at what else is happening and when we're reaching our debt levels, our debt limits, so that we can balance it and prioritise. I'm going to go on to the rating impact now and just show you the context. So you can see this is the Three Waters distributisation that happened in 2015. These numbers are 2015 numbers. So we know that in 2024 that these costs and therefore their impact on rates is substantially more. So when we distributised, Maniototo in both Ranfurly and Naseby benefited. So in the likes of Naseby, you saved $80 on your rates on average every year for the next 10 years.
So when we distributised back in 2015, before we did that, each little area had its own cost. So in Clyde, we didn't have wastewater. So our rates were really low. It's one of the reasons I first moved there. Cromwell were further through paying off their developments than other places. So you can see how much cheaper their stuff was than, say, Ormacau, which was really becoming unaffordable. When that decision was made in 2015, everybody across the district, no matter where they were, that were on a wastewater and drinking water supply, started paying the 1151. And you can see there were winners and losers, big winners and losers. And the people of Cromwell at that stage started paying 300, or more dollars extra than everybody else. Sorry, than what they were paying,
Yes.
because they took on a whole lot of the stuff in the district. If we were to be talking Three Waters now in the Maniototo, if we hadn't have done that in 2015, and the work we're going to have to do in Naseby and Ranfurly and in Pariaroa, just simply and utterly impossible to do it without the whole district behind it. We just couldn't ever be contemplating it. I don't know. I'll throw a number at it. Your rates would be 20 grand a year, roughly, for a house. That's the benefit of districtisation, I think, for everybody. Because Cromwell now, well, 9 years later, we're looking at the investments we need to make in Cromwell in terms of, and we've got to put Campbell-Vector protection in there within the next 18 months. The district's paying for that, not just Cromwell. So it's about looking at it over not just what's going to happen now if we districtise, but what's happened before and what's going to come in the future.
Okay. So this is the roading situation. That Maniototo has benefited significantly there. So the red dashed line is district rate, and the blue, the largest blue graph here is what you would have been paying for roads, which is actually over $2,500 per rating unit per year. So you can see that you've significantly benefited in the rating expenditure in rating.
Couple of grand a year 2 years ago. And that when we had the drop in and people said to me, what somehow the Cromwell Town Hall came up, and I said, well, look, the districtisation, you might wind up paying towards it. I don't see why we should. Showed them that, and they all without a person went, oh, never knew that. Yeah, fair enough. Because that's the benefit of districtisation. More people paying. You've got so few people per kilometre of the massive road network you've got in Maniototo. The only fair way to do it is by everybody in the district chipping in. The question is whether that applies to everything else.
Right, so the scope of what we're looking at here is now around figures to do with those rates that aren't districtised yet. So moving, so if we go to the pie graph.
Oh my God,
Get a great one. Yeah, sorry about that.
This is, so the dark blue is what's already districtised as far as cost centres and therefore rates. And then we can see that 18% in the orange is what's currently ward-based. So just moving along.
Actually, just on that one though, no matter what we do, if we do nothing, that 18% is going to shrink because the amount of money that we're having to put into Three Waters and to a lesser extent roading will simply make the blue portion bigger. So,
Yes.
so that 18% shrinking all the time.
So it was about 23% a couple of years ago. So it is already on the decline. So the 18%, which has got an awful lot of administration around it. And this is trying to demonstrate that. So on the left-hand side is the activities, grouping of activities. On the right-hand side is how we rate for that. So our ratepayers see award services rate, they see award services charge. You would wonder, because they're rated differently, they're called something different, but they're rolled up into award services charge, which is very difficult to then explain that to their ratepayers. So we've got 4 different types of charges. The bulk of our charges are in that recreation expenditure charge. The reason that grants is up here in red is that our intention through this process would be to leave the grants pots and your promotions pots with the community groups. Because we're thinking that, you know, you are closer to your community and the needs of distributing that than council. This is just purely to let you know that we, on the left-hand side, we rate on a unit basis. On the right-hand side, we do it on capital value. So there's different things, so we're doing things, there's different amounts for each ward that we're then breaking down, and we're breaking them down differently, and then we're rolling them up into like a ward services charge, and that's really hard to explain what that is because there's so many things, and then you can have a differential in there as well. So you can see for 18% of their rates, there's a lot of administration, but there's also a lot of difficulty actually making that clear to our rate. Yep. So I just put this one up here because we're talking about what's in and what's out of scope, and I've mentioned that our intention is that grants and promotions would stay with the community boards. The only one that we've pulled out at this stage is the Early Settlers Museum in Naseby. That is because it's purely for the modelling purposes. We have some wards that have museum property, we have some wards that have grants going to museums. So we also have some costs in the annual in the long-term plan that relate to the potential museum change of location in Cromwell to go with the Memorial Hall. None of those decisions have been quite sorted yet. So to be consistent with the model, we have taken out that grant and put it into the model of districtisation. So basically we leave the community boards with anything that is over and above museum or a full grant. Okay, for Maniototo, you have your own pool, and so those costs are coming through, and therefore they're in the model already. In CapEx, here you can see the big issue that's driving your deficit reserves, 3.75 million for earthquake-prone buildings. Is that sustainable? It's having a significant effect. It's been an issue since at least the 2015 LTP composition. And as you can see from that reserves graph, if you continue to spend that 3.75, you don't have the reserves to fund it. So there either has to be an impact on rates, or it has to be an impact on our debt, and it'll be external debt, and that causes us an issue. So that's to meet the standards as they stand at the moment.
So that's roughly what it's going to cost, and we have to wait for that later on, or are we rating for it now?
We're not rating for it now, but we would have to start rating for it if that was what.
Right.
What are the 5 walls? They can actually.
5 yards,
Yeah,
better road.
The Terry's not.
No, that's community.
And Dimmerburn's not.
That's
Given it's
right.
local.
Get rid of the bulldozer part. So what? I've got it. Something right here.
Okay, so the pie chart here is basically just another way of looking at the breakdown of the rate that we're talking about here. So, free quarters, community buildings, parks and reserves, swimming pools is all in that work and culture rate. And of course, they're the areas that have significant infrastructure, which we need to be thinking about over that long term. Now this is a summary, so you can see here green, the Maniototo. So this is back to the same way that we presented with Three Waters information. So over the 10 years, we've looked at the rating impact and then we've divided it by the 10 years to give you an average. So for the Maniototo, your average rates for the 18%, if it remains the same, status quo would be $947 every year, average. If we districtise, that would drop to $837. So you would benefit, so you benefited from Three Waters, you benefited from roading, and you would benefit from this. Now this is based on draft LTP figures. And as you can see, that graph with the reserves is not actually sustainable with the decisions that are in there at the moment. So there would get to be some movement, but certainly based on what's there at the moment, you would benefit from the districtisation. As well, and that's just from a rating perspective, but as well, we start to look long term with those assets and start to try to manage that process of replacement, etc. going forward. So this is what it looks like year on year. The yellow line in here is the districtised rate, and the Maniototo is the second column in. So you can see year on year that you are better off.
Year 3 operation.
Any questions on that?
But quickly, Vic, you've got your yellow line for your graph.
Yep.
Why isn't it straight through in the middle? Is it allowing for?
Because it's an average.
It's an average.
Yeah.
It's going up and down as the bars are.
Yeah, because of the fact that there's different expenditure in there in different years. This one here is just to have a look at the actual argument of why we're trying to do this. Is the Roxburgh pool is just being redone, and it is a community pool, and it's taken 20 years to actually get that pool replacement completed. Now it's still a community pool, so they raise the money from the community and community providers, etc. The capital cost is not necessarily always the issue. They have no means to fund depreciation so that they can build up a fund to replace that pool in another 30 years without having to go through 20 years of pain to get there. They have no ability unless they're going to charge an enormous amount of money for a song. The operational costs, that they haven't got anything if something breaks down. I mean, it's new at the moment, but things that wear and tear, and community funders don't generally fund operational expenditure. So this here is just a potential that if we were to bring the Roxburgh pool into council's remit, then we could actually start to charge for depreciation, etc. And in doing so, the district rate goes from the yellow line to the black dotted line, whereas the Cheviot Valley rate comes pretty close to that line at the end of the 10 years. So you can see if we were to take that on and average it, that actually we can be looking at long term and we can be working through those funding decisions, and it doesn't actually cost the ratepayer at a district level a huge amount of money, huge amount of extra money.
There's a degree of parity there in that pools at some massive drains of money. The Cheviot's the only ward where council is not providing that. So, you know, it would seem to be, if we did districtise, pretty unfair that we didn't bring the Cheviot into that same. And the structure at a practical level, we learned yesterday, I never knew this, but if you don't have trained lifeguards, then nobody under the age of 18 can go to the pool without their parents. I don't know about you, but imagine being between 13 and 18 having to take mum to the pool with you. They're pretty less than ideal. But also, there was a young lady who was 16 who had a baby and she couldn't take a baby to the pool for a paddle without her mum coming.
Is that at a council pool or?
No, that's because it's not a council pool, so they've got volunteers manning it, but because volunteers are manning it, there aren't trained lifeguards. And similar too, when you folk ran short of staff out here, David was able to bring people from Alice over. When they run short there, the poor committee that just finished building the pool and thought their work was over, ring, guess what you're doing today? You're sitting at the pool selling ice cream. So it's not gonna last. People are gonna get pretty sick of that. But it's fascinating for me that by the time that's done, if we were to take the full on, by the time you get to year 10, well, Maniototo's still winning. It's not winners and lose. Maniototo's still, you'll still be paying a bit more without distributisation, but really it's fairly even.
Thank you. So just before we go on to the next part, is there questions? Are you comfortable with that? You understand the why there's why. I mean, we mandated to have a financial strategy, and it's got to be affordable and sustainable. So, so we'll go on to the next part.
I can take this bit, Susie. Give you a break. So this is, you know, this is if the decision was made to districtise and there's the mayor touched on right at the very beginning. What does it mean for the community board? And this is straight out of the Act, the Local Government Act, and it sort of got lost in a bit of the noise in the delegations as well. This is the legal role of the community board. So whatever happens, as long as you have community board, this is what legally they do. But Wayne and Sarah have been having to think about this because it perhaps is not as encompassing as perhaps your own views of what community boards could do, should do, might do in the future if we were to recast. So the next few slides are just some thoughts, sort of blue sky thinking about what could be the potential vision for community board. So you can, in your own time, you can have a look through that, and when we get to the bit around feedback and engagement back to council and give us reports, then, you know, this might form the basis of what you think is really good for the community boards, or you might think, you know what, I think there's something else that we could be doing that's not really covered off in that, and let us know, because as the mayor has said, you know, the role of the community boards is fundamental to a district this big. And in many ways, you are, I use a military term, you are the eyes and ears, and that sort of forward edge of the battlefield type thing, letting us know what's going on across our community, you know. And so the role of the community boards is, if anything, under this whole process, would be strengthened and reinforced, because a lot more things would have to come back to the community board for your thoughts. So you could take a recommendation to council to provide some advice to council on what your thoughts are on activities that have relevance or impact within your particular ward district, in your ward area. Is there one more slide there?
Yeah.
I won't read them off.
No. We've got these presentation.
Yeah, sent out last week.
Yeah.
So this is the discussion, but happy to have that now. But if you just flick through
2 more slides, engagement and consultation. And this one here, so this is the timeline that we're working to. And so we're right over on the optioneering, and we'll be bringing back a paper to community boards in June. And then you'll see at the end of June, there is another workshop on this where the board chairs are invited to come along as well, and then feedback into council for the workshop, what you've been hearing, what your thoughts are as a community board, and letting council know this is what our thinking is and where we'd like this to go. So we've learned the lesson from the delegations that time and community boards to come around and have a particular view that can be sort of passed on.
So we're going to have 2 options, and you can take both, and you can take one or the other, but we are going to have the option, as Peter said, for you to feed in informally at the workshop on the 26th of June. And then in the paper that comes out in June, your next community board meeting is the 20th of June, and therefore you're signalling now that that's going to suggest that you can do a formal submission, and we would need that formal submission to make sure that we've got time to consider it so that we can go through the report on the 31st of July with council. Is that we're going to have a deadline on those written submissions of the 8th of July. So it's not so bad for all the other community boards because they're earlier, but you just need to have the opportunity to feed in informally. We're happy to discuss it today. This is just the start of the conversation, but then please note the paper it'll come out before your meeting, but we'll discuss it on the 20th. Then there's only a couple of 3 weeks to get to get that formal submission, and if that's what you so choose.
So what do you want us to put in the formal submission? Are we, like you've got?
Well, whatever you like.
I can't quite read it.
You might put this stinks.
Yeah.
Well, you might put, actually, this makes good sense, but the role that we see the board as having is such and such.
This is about what community boards do.
If it goes ahead, you might say, we don't want it to go ahead, but if it does, we might say, actually, this looks smart, we should do this. Either way, the role that we see the board to do, because if the boards continue to just do what they're doing now, but all the decision making is taken away, the boards will die. I think people will go, well, what's the point? But if I see the boards becoming, have always been, but I think more so, becoming the chief advocacy body for the Maniototo when it comes to council stuff. So, practical example, let's take the swimming pool, which is getting to the end of its life. You know, is it going to be replaced? Is it going to be, what's going to be done with it? At the moment, because it's ward based. If we don't do anything, that's going to come to you guys next year, next term, probably next year in the LTP. There'll be a cost come out. We need, let's take the rocks, for example. We need $2 million to rebuild that pool. Holy shit. Maniototo is going to be popping up $2 million. Where's that coming from? You know, you've already gone to that sort of debt for the hospital. How the hell are you going to do it? It's all going to fall on this table. Yet when it comes to council table, we're still going to have a look over it because I don't know if we can raise the debt. If we districtise, what might happen is that it becomes a bit of you become the advocate to the council to go, hey, your pool, council, your pool in Cromwell, it's not our pool, it's your pool in Ranfurly, is buggered, and council staff will provide a report that says it's buggered and here's what it's going to cost to replace. And then you're going to come to council and say, this is why the pool needs rebuilt, and this is the usage it gets, this is letters from the public, this is letters from the Lions, whatever you think you need to get it onto council's radar and get it in that LTP, for instance, if it is the next LTP next year that comes up, to get it in there to say, right, in year 6 of the LTP, you're going to have to budget $2 million for the pool. But there's a double-edged sword. One, the council might simply go, we don't have the money. Well, that makes no difference, because if we don't have the money, whether you're doing it or we're doing it, we don't have the debt ceiling, it won't matter. 2, the council might go,
yeah, we can do it, but it might be out to year 8 because we've got this other thing in Roxbury that we have to do in year 6. Who knows? Or 3, the council might go, yep, sweet, 26,000 people are going to make a contribution in year 6 to the pool and Renfrew. So the final, in the big things, the final answer is always going to come down to the money. In the small things, you're still going to be advocating for the Maniototo, and dare I raise the events we've been through over the last couple of weeks, that I see that as being a way forward, where the board had a decision that the council could have not talked to the board about that decision. It would have been the wrong thing to do, but it could have. We did that 5 or 6 years ago with the airport hangars in Cromwell. Council made a decision because that was council's decision to make. We didn't talk to the board. That was a huge mistake. So we had to talk to the board, and I can guarantee you, and Stu's not here, when it came the time for that around the council table, the voice of the board was the loudest voice in the room. The majority of the councillors said, I have heard what the board said, and I'm not going against that because the board speaks for the community. And that's exactly how it should work. I know my vote went the other way, but it was exactly how the process should work. That the board spoke and we're going to listen. So that's how I see something like what it could become. I don't see the board. The boards at the moment do not put in submissions to the annual plan or the long-term plan or anything else that we do. The boards could do that, but it wouldn't be as a submitter. It would be as a partner. So it wouldn't be like, oh, here's the board's submissions along with everyone else's. It would be, right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to listen to hear what our boards have to say about this in some shape or form. So I see it as actually, we haven't been utilising and doing a good enough job with our boards. Put the distributisation discussion to one side. We haven't utilised our boards as much as we should have because we've got stuck in our lanes. That council stuff, that's board stuff, and never the train shall meet. And we can do better. But I came to council from being a community board member. I've never been a councillor in my life. So I do get that board viewpoint, but it's been a long time ago now for me that I was on the Vincent Community Board 12 years ago. So yeah, we need input from you guys. I'm using. So,
and your submission can be as long and as short as you want. Could be verbal, and we just write it down. Give us a call, and send us an email. We can work it out for you and send it back to you. Wordsmith it up.
You've got a couple of guys missing, so if you want to catch up at another time to talk things through, and you want us here for part of it, or all of it, or none of it, they might have further, Mark and Stu might have further questions. We can jump on a Zoom, whatever.
And the other thing, what's going to come out of the council meeting at the end of July is the consultation document that the council will need to adopt to then use the month of August to put that out across the community and see what the community says. So your role in that could be quite important as well. And then that has to come back for, much like we're doing with the annual plan, for hearings, submissions, that sort of stuff, and then subsequent decision for the 20, what date is that? 25th September. So a bit of time.
So going back to rating for stuff, if, like you say, next year we're going to look at the side of the pool and we want to, and the council say it's going to be worn out in 6 years' time, we're going to come up with $2 to $3 million. Can we say, right, we want to take X amount of dollars out of everyone's rate, $100 out of all the rates, and keep putting it aside in the year, or do we have to rate extra?
It depends on what's in there at the moment. So it will mean that it's extra to what you're rating. There will be an uplift.
Yeah. But what we can say, wherever it comes from, how it works, we can take so much money every year, put it into a fund for a pool, or can we just have to get the lump
Sort of driving depreciation there.
Yeah.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
But it would be, so we went around this bit with Vincent today. So they said, if we put up, I can't remember what Vincent's example was, but if you guys would say, right, we really need the pool, and the council went, we can't afford the pool, then you got a couple of options open to you. You could advocate for the council to sell some endowment land and apply to the pool. You could advocate to the council to put a targeted rate on for Ranfurly for the pool, or the Maniototo. I don't think I'd do that, because while you're putting a target rate on for the pool and the Maniototo, you will, under distributisation, be paying for Cromwell, Alex pools, and probably Roxbury. So why should you not But it might get you ahead of the queue. Because councillors are going to have to sit around the table and go, we can't do everything. And I guess your halls is probably a better example. LGNZ is advocating at the moment and getting some real traction with the new government that we get away from this madness of making every hall perfect. We put a sign on the door saying, if you're going to watch Hello Dolly tonight and there's an earthquake, you might die. It's up to you. You know, put it back on the people, which would solve that problem. But what we've got at the moment is 5 halls, $3.78 million. And you guys could come to us and go, well, we want them all fixed. And the council might well go, well, choose one. But that's actually going to be easier for council to do than it will be for you guys anyway. But again, it wouldn't be without consultation and all the rest of it that we'd have anyway. But it may come down to it that we simply cannot afford to bring all of those halls up to earthquake standard.
Because all I see is with the particular halls, it just keeps going further and further away. And it just keep going, yeah, we'll see you later another day.
The magical year 4 of the LTP, where things go to be buried.
And that's the reason we need to do this, is that we've got to be looking long term. We can't just keep pushing things out. And we did even say in the 2015 LTP consultation document that we needed to look at rationalisation, and we needed to have that conversation with the community.
And I think if I can just add to your comment, I think we are actually doing that now. You can come to the event and if there's an earthquake.
Yeah.
Because we are pushing it out, so we are effectively doing that. And
That is a deadline that the government's got. They're pushing out stops here.
Yeah, but which is a long way off, like 20 odd years. And there's probably some sensible decisions to be made around rationalising those assets anyway.
What do you call rationalisation? So
I guess that's up to you. Yep. So you have some halls already that you've cited are owned by the community. You know, there's different ways of doing things.
I shouldn't say this. In my mind, Maniototo has got a stadium down here. It's the only one we need. We've got a town hall here. To me, it's the only one we need. We've got ones that the Peterara and Wedderburn that could be sold off. Because in Waipiata, it's used. Is it used once a year anymore? When they don't do darts in there anymore or anything. They don't have
Alternate Anzac Day.
Yeah, every 6 years. So, and it costs us whatever a year to run.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. But those are hard decisions to make. And when those halls were built, it was a long way from Waipiata to Range Road. It's not now.
Yeah, your communities were smaller,
Yeah.
smaller places. But there's a bit of work around the status of all of that property as well. So we've already started looking at that so that you can make some informed.
All that when we were looking at the Wedderburn, didn't we?
Yep.
The options around that are limited because of the status of the land.
Yeah, that's right.
Because was it on reserve land? So the reserve land.
And there was an unusual situation around Wedderburn that.
Because you got to
There's
offer.
no way to talk about Stu.
Stuart.
That's complicated. He's not unusual. He's just different.
It's a complicated process for them.
Yeah. There's 3 things you got to go through before you even get started.
Yeah. So you need to understand that first.
So, but then you go to reserve land. Can you get it away from being reserved?
It is possible, but it's easier to remove a reserve status if you're putting it somewhere else. Recreation reserve, if you're saying we don't use this for recreation reserve, where else are you going to provide the community for their recreational needs? So it's not just as simple as going, oh, we don't need that anymore. So it's just working through the complexities of the Reserves Act and the approvals from the minister, but we'll unpack all of that as part of that project so you can look at it now.
Quiet over there, Becky.
Little one.
Good deal.
Yeah, I guess that's probably it from us.
Yeah.
But look, we're only a phone call, email away. And we'd certainly welcome your thoughts on all of this, that sort of stuff.
But, so geez, let's take it. Yeah, appreciate it.
Anything else from anyone? All right, thank you very much.